"You're evicting us?" Erin, Linda's daughter, stared in disbelief. Todd, her smug son-in-law, froze mid-chew. Across the table, Linda folded her napkin with surgical calm. "Legally, I can. Emotionally, you already did." The room fell silent. They thought the house was theirs until the woman they sidelined served them a notice. "All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from." The plate landed in front of her with a quiet clink, but the weight of it hit harder than china should. Half a chicken thigh, precisely trimmed, 3 green beans, limp and cold, a spoonful of mashed potatoes, absent of gravy. "Smaller portions are better at your age, Mom," Erin said with a bright smile that tried to pass as thoughtful but split like glass under pressure. "We don't want your blood pressure going haywire, right?" The words slid across the table like a warning. The others barely noticed, too busy with second helpings and full glasses of red wine. Todd was already digging into his second chicken breast. Their twins, Taylor and Noah, passed a basket of garlic rolls, warm and steaming, without once glancing her way. Linda sat still, her fork hovered over the green beans. Then came the laugh, a short chorus-like chuckle, as if Erin had landed a punchline they'd all rehearsed. Todd smirked and said, "You know, your mom's got that World War II stomach, 1 ration per meal." That was the moment. Not when the fork dropped, not when the wine bottle emptied, but right then, when her own daughter called her elderly without saying the word, and her son-in-law turned it into sport. Linda forced a tight smile, pushed the food around her plate, and said nothing. That night, long after the dishwasher had stopped humming and the house had dimmed into silence, she sat cross-legged on the floor of her in-law suite, a manila envelope opened beside her. The air still held the scent of lemon soap and rosemary chicken, the good rosemary, the kind she used to keep growing in her old backyard before she sold the house. She didn't sleep. She sorted every document she'd kept since the sale of her home, neatly labeled in clear plastic sleeves, closing statements, wire transfer receipts, emails between realtors. She flipped through them with slow precision, like a nurse reviewing patient charts, trained to find what others overlook. Then she pulled out the house contract, the big one, 42 pages, signed and notarized in bold blue ink. Her heart beat louder the further she flipped. Not out of fear, out of memory. Page 6, line 3, title holder, Linda Ann Grayson. Her name. No co-owners, no co-signers, no Grayson Todd Trust. Just her. She sat back against the bed and exhaled. They'd made her feel like a guest in their home, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was stashed in a filing cabinet. The truth was paid in full by her. Erin had asked her to sell the family house after Todd got laid off. Said it was for the future. Said they'd all live together. Linda would have her own in-law suite, privacy, and equal say. It had sounded like a promise. Now, 3 years in, she couldn't remember the last time someone knocked before walking into her space. Erin had taken over the grocery shopping. Todd had called her extra during last week's budget talk, and the kids had started calling the in-law unit Grandma's Pod. She wasn't aging, she was vanishing. Linda stared at her name on the title for a long, quiet moment. It didn't shout. It didn't glow. It just was. The next morning, Erin bustled into the kitchen, hair in a towel wrap, iced coffee in hand. "Hey, can you be quick in the shower? Todd needs to hop in before his Zoom thing." Linda smiled pleasantly. Of course. She ate breakfast at the counter alone, toast without butter because Erin was watching cholesterol for everyone now. She watched Todd toss his gym bag into the trunk and yell goodbye to no one in particular. The sound of their car backing out didn't bother her today because last night she found something better than seconds at dinner. She found leverage. Across the kitchen, Erin scrolled through her phone, not looking up. "By the way," she said, voice too casual, "we'll need to scoot your car to the street this weekend. Todd's expecting a delivery." "My car?" Linda asked, tone mild but not soft. "Yeah, we just don't want it in the driveway with the furniture crew coming and all. You don't mind, right?" The word mind was a trap. Linda smiled faintly. "Of course not." She didn't add what she was thinking. "The driveway I paid for, the garage you filled, the house with my name on it." She returned to her room, her teacup balanced in both hands, careful not to spill a drop. Old habits from years in the hospital, carrying too much with too little support. She passed by the hallway photo of Aaron and Todd in front of the house on move-in day. Linda had taken that photo. Aaron had posted it with the caption, "Homeowners finally funny." No mention of the cash buyer who made it possible. 3 years ago, she'd stood in a lawyer's office with Aaron on one side, Todd nervously bouncing his leg on the other. He'd just been laid off. Erin was 6 months pregnant with their second child. The plan had sounded so reasonable at the time: sell the house she'd shared with her late husband, consolidate under one roof, start a new chapter. The in-law suite would be hers. Separate entrance, private bath, her own small garden. She'd even get equal say. Equal, it turned out, was conditional. She wasn't consulted when Erin painted over the garden fence Linda had hand-stained, or when her favorite rose bush was pulled to make room for a patio cooler Todd never used. The front porch light bulb had gone out 3 weeks ago. Linda replaced it herself. No one noticed. The word home had subtly shifted too. Aaron now said things like, "Mom lives with us," instead of "we live with Mom." Todd joked that Linda's suite was the basement annex, even though it was on the main floor. And at birthday dinners, guests were given house tours with phrases like, "This is our space. Oh, and that's my mom's room over there." Not their room, not our home, just hers, separate, tolerated, like a slightly messy guest overstaying her welcome. And yet the mortgage had been hers from day one, the full down payment Linda's. She'd sold her husband's home in a good market, accepted a quick offer, and signed the bank wire herself. Ariane and Todd hadn't qualified on their own. They'd needed her to close the deal, and they'd promised that she'd never be made to feel like an afterthought. A soft knock came from the door. "Hey, Mom," Erin said, poking her head in. "Can you make sure you're not using the washer around 3 or tomorrow? I've got a Zoom thing, and the sound carries upstairs." Linda nodded. Of course. Her voice was calm, the same tone she'd once used with difficult patients. Measured, level, not quite neutral. After Erin left, Linda pulled out the small notebook she kept in her nightstand. She turned to a fresh page and scribbled a date in a sentence. They call it theirs, but the deed disagrees. Then she opened her tablet, tapped the bookmarks tab, and clicked on an old name she hadn't used in years: Martin Kleena, Estate and Trust Law. Soma. The contact page loaded slowly, the signal faint, but the message went through. "Hi, Martin. It's Linda Grayson. I'd like to schedule a consult about property access and asset protection. I believe I'm still your client of record." She hit send. Then she closed the notebook and her eyes. Some titles came with salaries. Others came with deeds. The message had been sent, but Linda kept her movements deliberate. Nothing in her posture betrayed the quiet urgency in her chest. She continued her days the same way she had for years, low profile, polite, with a quiet kind of discipline. But now her gaze caught details it had once ignored. The first one was taped to the fridge. The new kitchen and chores calendar appeared on a Monday morning, bright pastel blocks outlined in dry erase marker. At the top, it read, "Household Harmony, we all pitch in." Each name had its own color. Todd in blue, Aaron in pink, the kids in green. Linda, she was gold. Ironically regal. Under Monday, next to her name, 5:30 p.m. Dinner, Linda, low salt, small portion. 7 a.m., feed cats. Thursday, sweep hallway, plus switch laundry. Linda stared at the board, mug in hand, as if it were a lab report detailing something she already knew but needed confirmed. That evening, dinner was served at exactly 5:30. Erin slid a plate in front of her while the rest of the family set the table for 6. "Hope it's not too salty," she said brightly, walking away before Linda could respond. She didn't ask if Linda wanted to eat with them. She didn't wait to see if she did. The salt comment hadn't come out of nowhere. 2 weeks prior, Linda had added a pinch more seasoning to the soup and mentioned it. Aaron had blinked, then spent 15 minutes Googling hypertension risks over 65 and left a brochure about sodium intake on Linda's placemat the next morning. Since then, her meals had become prescriptive, measured, clinical. The control bled into everything. Linda's seat on the couch now had a decorative throw pillow that helped posture. Her preferred TV channel was often changed mid-show because the kids need calm before bed. Even her tea bags had been moved to a lower cabinet to make it easier. It wasn't care, it was containment. On Friday, Todd's mother came to visit. Sharon arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of pastries, and a big open-mouthed laugh that filled the entire front hallway. Aaron greeted her like royalty, hugging her with both arms, cooing over her new hairstyle, offering slippers and a fleece robe. Mom, I made your room up with the lavender sachets you love." That night, Linda heard them laughing over wine, real wine, not the boxed kind Linda was asked to avoid because of the sulfites. Sharon got the plush guest towels. She got French toast the next morning with syrup. Linda's own towel had frayed edges and a bleach mark from when Aaron deep cleaned the guest bathroom and tossed it there without asking. By Sunday, Sharon was featured in a cheerful Instagram post. "Weekend reset with my favorite woman. Blessed to have 2 moms, but this one's the queen of family first." Gratitude. Linda wasn't tagged. Of course not. That evening, after everyone had gone upstairs, Linda stood in the kitchen, staring at the calendar again, her name next to the 5:30 slot, gold and polite. She reached for the marker, paused. Instead, she took out her phone and opened the Notes app. Day 1. Dinner served separately, portion monitored, salt policed. She saved the note and tapped the little lock icon beside it. She began documenting everything, quietly, like building a case she hadn't decided to prosecute yet. That night, as she brushed her teeth, she caught her own reflection in the mirror. Her robe was worn but clean. Her face was a bit tired but alert. There was no anger in her expression, only clarity. Let them schedule her. Let them choreograph her life down to teaspoons and TV time. She was counting too. And unlike them, she wasn't using dry erase. The next day, when Linda returned home after grocery shopping, as usual, the grocery bag barely rustled as Linda set it down. But Aaron's voice still carried from across the house like a parental chime. "Mom, did you buy orange juice?" Linda didn't answer immediately. She was removing the receipt from the side pouch of her purse, neatly folded like always, and placing the carton into the fridge door next to the almond milk no one ever finished. "I did," she replied, voice steady. "It was on sale." Aaron appeared in the doorway, brow knit into that smileless expression she'd started wearing more often. "I just wish you told me first. We're trying to stay on top of the budget this month." "That's what the fridge calendar's for." Linda glanced at the pastel-colored meal and budget schedule, still pinned with magnetic sunflowers. Apparently, Tuesday was oat milk smoothie day. "I don't recall orange juice being on the contraband list," Linda said mildly. Aaron sighed. "It's not that, it's just, it helps if you ask before buying extras. Or at least use coupons. Some of the grocery rewards expired because we weren't syncing." Linda nodded once, walked to her room, and closed the door quietly. She didn't raise her voice, didn't argue, but she did log into her online banking account. Then she pulled out the spreadsheet she'd kept on her old laptop. Monthly contributions, Aaron, Todd, XLSX. Every check, every Venmo transfer, every grocery run. Every week she'd paid out of pocket to help out, $60 here, $120 there. She printed it all, neatly sorted by date. Then she added another sheet, school donations, kids.xlsx, class pizza parties, Spirit Week costumes, tutoring fees, all pulled from her account. Aaron's voice filtered through the vent above, something about needing a new swimsuit, asking Todd if he thought black or coral was more flattering. Linda paused. The phone was still open on the countertop from earlier. Notifications lit up the screen. A new message preview appeared from a group chat labeled Miami Girls 2024. Aaron, book the hotel, oceanfront, 3 nights. We're doing this. Underneath it, another message from her friend Ashley. Tell your Mael thanks for the support fund. Linda stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she walked back to her room and opened her email. She didn't write anything angry. She didn't attach any PDFs. She just forwarded her grocery spreadsheet to herself and added her attorney's name in the CC field, then typed 2 words into the subject line, review request. That evening at dinner, Aaron passed Linda a single boiled potato. No salt, no butter. We're watching our starches, she said with a wink. Linda thanked her, folded her napkin carefully, and asked, How's your swimsuit shopping going? Erin blinked. What? For Miami, Linda said evenly. Coral or black, right? The silence that followed could have sucked the air out of the room. Todd looked up from his phone. The twins froze mid-bite. Erin gave a too loud laugh. Oh, you saw that? Yeah, it's just a little getaway. Don't worry, it's covered. Linda didn't respond. She didn't have to. That night, she brewed her tea a little stronger, used 2 bags. No one stopped her. Her phone buzzed at 10:11 p.m. Text from Benjamin Hartman-esque. Just reviewed documents. You still legally control the house. Want to talk about options? Linda didn't smile. She reached for her reading glasses, sat there quiet as the kitchen light buzzed overhead, and slowly pushed her reading glasses higher on her nose. The house around her still moved in the rhythm of denial. Aaron's humming from the laundry room, Todd's off-key whistling as he passed down the hall. But something in the foundation had already shifted, this time in her direction. The next morning, she called Benjamin Hartman's office at precisely 9:01 a.m. I'd like to file a formal 30-day notice to vacate, she said calmly. 2 tenants, no lease, property under my name alone. There was a pause, then a soft, impressed chuckle from the other end. Ms. Grayson, Benjamin said, I believe you're ready. She was. By Thursday afternoon, the document was ready. Clean, legal, bulletproof. Linda read it line by line at her kitchen table, highlighter in one hand, tea mug in the other. She didn't change a word. She didn't need to. The envelope was plain white. No drama, no tricks. She placed it on the kitchen counter beneath a glass paperweight shaped like a cardinal, right in the middle of the weekly dinner prep, lasagna night, Aaron's favorite. Dinner was crowded that night. Todd had cracked open a bottle of wine. The twins were louder than usual, tossing garlic knots across the table, while Aaron tried to maintain order with tight smiles and passive shushing. Linda sat at her usual seat, third chair from the left, edge of the table, within arm's reach of the fridge calendar, like always. Aaron moved toward the counter to grab Parmesan when she saw the envelope. She picked it up absent-mindedly, peeled it open while still mid-laugh, and froze. The silence that followed wasn't immediate. It was gradual, like a room losing oxygen. Her fork clinked softly as it slid from her hand. What is this? Aaron asked, voice flat. Todd leaned over and read it, then laughed. You've got to be kidding me, he said. This is a joke, right? It's not, Linda said evenly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. You're evicting us? Aaron hissed, eyes wide, cheeks flushing with heat. You're serving your own daughter? Linda looked at her squarely. Legally, I can. Emotionally, you already did. Todd pushed back from the table. You're going to regret this. You think people won't find out? That they won't talk? Linda folded her napkin with surgical precision and placed it beside her plate. Let them. Todd narrowed his eyes. Fine then, I'll take it public. Aaron stood frozen. You don't mean this. You can't. Linda rose from the table, slowly, calm as ever. 30 days, that's all. She walked back to her suite without another word. Inside, her hand trembled only once, just long enough to place her phone on the charger. The rest of the house remained suspended in confused panic. She could hear Aaron pacing the hallway, whispering frantically into her phone, Todd slamming a cabinet, the unmistakable sounds of people scrambling to regain a power they thought they owned. Linda sipped her tea. She didn't feel angry. She felt awake. Todd's voice rose from the hallway. You want a war? Fine, I'll take this public. Todd's voice was still echoing through the hallway when Linda closed her suite door. She didn't slam it. She didn't lock it. She just let the wood settle back into the frame, like punctuation, quiet, final, understood. She heard the texting begin before she even sat down, the frantic tapping, the muffled notifications, Aaron's voice spiking in whispers and exasperated gasps. The family group chat was waking up like a beast poked too early, and Linda didn't even need to check her phone to know what came next. She just waited. At 8:47 p.m., her phone buzzed once, then again, then 12 more times. When she finally unlocked it, the screen was lit with messages from the Grayson family chain. Aaron, 7:58 p.m. Can someone explain how a 69-year-old kicks her family out? Aaron, 8:01 p.m. I'm seriously worried she's not well. This is like unhinged. Cousin Naomi. Wait, what's going on? Uncle Dan, Linda, are you okay? Aaron, 8:06 p.m. She's been acting different. Reclusive, erratic. I'm honestly scared for her. Todd, 8:07 p.m. She called it reclaiming power. Honestly, it feels abusive. Linda blinked at the screen. She didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she opened the photo album on her phone. Folder, Evidence. She selected the clearest image first, her dinner from 3 nights ago, half a cold chicken thigh, a fork stuck in a lone green bean. Timestamp included. Next, a photo of the fridge calendar, her name highlighted in gold with small portion and low salt scribbled beside it. Then a PDF attachment, her contribution spreadsheet, itemizing the household expenses she'd covered for 3 years running. She dropped them all in the group thread. No caption. The typing indicator stopped. For a long time, no one responded. Then, Cousin Naomi, 8:20 p.m. Wow. Uncle Dan, 8:21 p.m. Okay, didn't know all that. Cousin Cheryl, 8:22 p.m. Aaron, this isn't what you said. A few quiet exits followed. Cousin Kim has left the chat. Then another. Linda got up, refilled her teacup, and walked to the window. The house was dark except for the hallway nightlight. She could hear Todd muttering on the phone upstairs, pacing. Aaron's footsteps passed her door and doubled back, like she was debating whether to knock. She didn't. Back in her recliner, Linda found a new message, not in the group chat, but from her niece, Rachel. Rachel, 8:39 p.m. Aunt Linda, I don't know what to say. You're not wrong. Just brave. Let me know if you need anything. Linda's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before replying. Linda, thank you. I've needed someone to say that for a while. 10 minutes later, she received a text from a cousin in Nevada. Cousin Paul, my mom says she always admired you. If anyone says otherwise, it's jealousy. Keep standing tall, and then silence again. At 9:22 p.m., a voicemail notification appeared. Aaron. Linda tapped play, keeping the phone an inch from her ear. Hi, Mom. I don't know what's happening. I want to talk, okay? Not argue, just talk. Maybe we could negotiate something that works better for all of us. Linda paused the voicemail halfway through. She didn't need to hear the rest. She already knew the tone. It was the same one Aaron used on the phone with customer service. Syrupy, strategic, vaguely condescending. She'd once heard her use that voice to ask for a manager at a brunch spot because they'd forgotten extra hollandaise. Negotiation wasn't about peace. It was about control. Linda opened her notes app, typed, Day 4, group narrative attempted, documentation succeeded, next move inbound. She folded the throw blanket over her lap, leaned back in the recliner, and turned on the classical station she used to fall asleep to when Daniel was still alive. Strings hummed softly through the speaker, building into something tense but measured, exactly like her. The music had just faded from Linda's radio when the soft knock came, too polite to be sincere. A pause followed, then another knock, this one firmer. She didn't answer right away. She let Aaron stand there in the quiet, letting her weight shift in indecision. Finally, she opened the door. Can we talk? Aaron asked, hands folded like she was about to offer a blessing, not a plea. Linda stepped aside. You can talk. The room smelled faintly of peppermint tea and lavender lotion. Linda had lit a candle 20 minutes earlier, knowing this would happen, knowing that sooner or later the tone would shift from accusation to strategy. Aaron sat down on the edge of the armchair like it might bite her. She was dressed in her weekend yoga set, but there was nothing relaxed about her posture. Look, I know emotions are high, she began, but this whole eviction thing, it's extreme, Mom. Linda folded her hands calmly. Is that your opinion or Todd's? Aaron blinked. It's mine and the kids. This is really hard on them. Linda tilted her head. Were they worried about me when you stopped setting a place for me at dinner? That's not fair, Aaron said quickly. You always eat early. We were just trying to manage. Me, Linda offered. Aaron inhaled sharply. Mom, please, you're ruining everything we built. Linda raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words. You say we built it. I remember buying it. There was a moment, just one, where Erin looked like a child again, cornered, outmatched, trying to wriggle free with charm that no longer stuck. She leaned forward. I'm not here to fight. I'm asking for time, that's it. Just time. Linda didn't blink. You've had 3 years. This will traumatize the kids, Erin snapped. Do you even care? Linda stood slowly, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled down a small leather folder. From inside it, she removed the same spreadsheet she'd sent to her attorney. She placed it gently on the coffee table between them. Numbers didn't yell. They didn't twist tone. They just sat there, unshakable. Your trauma, Linda said quietly, started the moment you decided that being my daughter came with conditional gratitude. Erin's eyes welled, but it wasn't grief. It was frustration. Why are you doing this now? You've always been so accommodating. Linda smiled faintly. That's exactly why. Erin stood abruptly. You're seriously choosing to ruin your family over a few dinners and a stupid trip. No, Linda replied, voice even. I'm choosing to stop pretending this is a family when it's been a transaction all along. Erin's mouth opened, then shut. Her shoulders sagged with disbelief, the kind that comes from realizing the old playbook no longer works. I'll call a lawyer, she muttered. You should, Linda said. That way he can explain the 30-day clock. Erin stared at her, waiting for a softening, for a crack, for a catch in the voice. None came. Please pack respectfully, Linda said, standing now. 30 days means 30. Erin didn't say goodbye. She left the room with the kind of silence only someone unaccustomed to losing could make. Linda closed the door gently behind her, then turned the candle out with a soft breath. The room went dark, but it felt brighter than it had in years. 2 mornings later, Todd didn't knock. He just stormed down the hall, his cologne arriving before his voice. The house echoed with indignation as he reached Linda's door. We need to talk, he said. Tone clipped, one hand, still holding his phone like a badge of authority. Linda was buttering toast. She didn't flinch. Todd continued without invitation. This whole eviction stunt, it's not enforceable. I spoke to a friend who knows a guy at the bank. I'm applying for refinance this week. You can't just toss us out of a house we've made payments on. Linda set her toast down. You've made payments? He blinked. Utilities, groceries, repairs. She wiped her hands on a tea towel. So rent? His jaw clenched. I'm not getting into semantics. That's fine, she said. The bank doesn't deal in semantics, just titles. And hers was still the only name on the deed. Todd left in a fury of motion, fingers already dialing. By noon, he had an appointment at First State Lending. By 3:15, he was pacing the parking lot, red-faced and humiliated. The banker had smiled kindly, then printed out the property profile from the county assessor's database. I'm sorry, Mr. Bell, the woman had said. You can't refinance a home you don't legally own. Ms. Grayson's name is listed solely, and unless she adds you to the title or signs consent, this application goes nowhere. But I live there, Todd insisted. Living somewhere doesn't make you the owner, she replied. Otherwise, renters would own apartments. He left with a manila folder containing nothing but polite rejection. That night, Todd didn't come down for dinner. Linda noted the silence with no surprise. Erin tiptoed around the room like guilt had soaked into her socks. The kids whispered too much, sensing a weather shift even cartoons couldn't drown out. The next morning, Linda met with Benjamin Hartman again. This time, she carried a copy of Todd's bluff. Her attorney skimmed the email transcript, then handed her a clean sheet titled Affidavit of Sole Ownership. He slid her a pen. Want to make this public record? He asked. Linda nodded. It's time. She signed. With each stroke of ink, she didn't feel victorious. She felt validated. Benjamin looked pleased. Once it's filed, it'll block any future attempts to claim interest in the home. If they try again, this becomes Exhibit A. The affidavit was filed with the county clerk the next day. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It just was legal, final, and irrefutable. By Thursday, the ripple began. It started with a cousin, Debbie from St. Louis, who posted a passive-aggressive meme about how money turned sweet elders into tyrants. Then came the screenshot. It arrived in Linda's inbox from her niece, Jess. The subject line read simply, "Thought you should see this." Attached was a grab from a private Facebook rant Erin had written, only she forgot Debbie was still connected to Jess. Boomers don't get it. They're sitting on wealth and throwing us out like garbage. She acts like the house is hers, like we didn't help. Greedy, controlling, unstable, she's isolating herself, and one day she'll regret it. But fine, let her rot in her golden cage. Linda stared at the words in silence. She didn't forward it to her lawyer. She didn't reply to Jess. She just opened her phone, scrolled back to her private note, and added, "Day 29. My silence was mistaken for surrender, but I was busy filing the truth." Linda didn't reply to Erin's digital tantrum. She didn't call Jess to ask what others were saying. She didn't deny the accusations or forward screenshots to defend her name. She simply read the messages twice, once as a mother, and again as a woman who had finally stopped mistaking silence for peace. Then she closed the email, stood slowly from her breakfast chair, and reached for the folder she hadn't opened in 2 years, Estate and End of Life, Confidential. Once it had lived in a fireproof box under her bed, nestled beside old passports and faded photos of her wedding day. Now it sat beside her French press and the half-finished lemon loaf she'd baked that morning. Only one slice was missing. She'd eaten it deliberately, not out of hunger but clarity. Every bite had tasted like something she had once forgotten, ownership. There had been a time years ago when Linda assumed Erin would handle everything once she passed. It was the natural order, wasn't it? The child buries the parent, carries the family name forward, holds the family story. But that was before Erin took a knife to more than just a chicken thigh. She drove herself to her attorney's office, the same one where she'd signed the purchase contract for the house, where Erin had once held her hand and called her brave for putting her name on the dotted line. Linda remembered that moment now for what it really was, not a gesture of trust, but convenience. The office smelled faintly of wood polish and distant paper jams. Linda sat in the same high-backed leather chair, its corners worn, its silence familiar. Benjamin Hartman greeted her with a respectful nod. "Mrs. Grayson, or may I call you Linda?" "Linda is fine," she said, sitting straighter. "Let's not waste time today." He opened her file. "We've already filed the affidavit on the house. Erin and Todd can't touch it. Not now, not later. What would you like to do next?" Linda pulled a sealed envelope from her bag and slid it across the desk. "Update the will, effective immediately." He raised an eyebrow. "Erin and Todd removed," she said firmly. "No partial shares, no contingencies. Alternate beneficiaries?" Without pause, Jessica Grayson Parker, granddaughter, 21, honest, kind, knows how to listen. Benjamin glanced at her, then jotted down the name. "Full estate transfer?" "Yes." "Assets, property, accounts." He flipped to a fresh form. "And if Jessica declines the inheritance?" Linda folded her hands. "Donate everything, preferably to a foundation that supports women over 50, especially those forced out by family members." Benjamin's pen paused, then resumed. "Specific fund?" "I'll research it this week. For now, just write it in as a directive." The document took 30 minutes to draft. The phrasing was cold, legal, final. Erin and Todd's names appeared only once, under the heading Former Beneficiaries. Linda initialed every page. She didn't pause, not even on the signature line. The pen glided, clean. No shaking. Benjamin slid the file into a plastic sleeve. "You'll need a witness signature, someone independent, ideally." "I've got someone," Linda said. "She shows up when it matters." That evening, Linda called Jess. The phone rang twice. "Grandma," Jess answered, bright and unguarded. "I have a question for you," Linda said gently. "A personal one." "Shoot. If you were ever left something unexpectedly, would you take care of it or sell it?" Jess paused. "Depends. Is it a house or a goldfish?" Linda laughed. "It's not aquatic." "Then I'd take care of it," Jess said, "unless it was haunted or infested." "No ghosts," Linda replied. "Just a rose garden and a chapter worth continuing." "Is everything okay?" Linda looked around her kitchen, quiet, tidy. No one scheduling her meals or rationing her salt. I'm just clearing the books, she said, figuring out where the story ends and where it gets handed off. After they hung up, she opened her laptop and wrote one email. Subject: Want to talk about the house? Body: Let me tell you a story they didn't think I'd write. She hit send. Outside, the wind shuffled through the hedges. Somewhere behind her, a door creaked and settled into stillness. She poured herself a glass of water, took a sip, and watched her reflection blur in the microwave glass. She didn't feel vindictive. She felt precise. Linda didn't argue. She documented. While Aaron whispered about her decline, Linda printed receipts. The deed, the will, the live-in agreement. No speeches, no scenes, just paper delivered to the PTA and the church office. By Thursday, a board member emailed, "Would you consider joining us next semester?" Linda closed her laptop slowly. Not revenge, restoration. When Aaron stormed in, "You gave them our family documents?" Linda stayed calm. "No," she said. "I gave them mine." "You're burning bridges." Linda sliced the lemon loaf without looking up. "I'm removing scaffolding. There's a difference." Linda didn't answer Aaron's last accusation. She had finished slicing the lemon loaf, wiped the blade clean, and turned her back to the doorway. The silence wasn't dramatic. It was chosen, deliberate. Aaron stood there for another breath, expecting rebuttal. It didn't come, so she turned and left, barefoot and wordless. The air that lingered behind her felt like a peeled Band-Aid, exposed and faintly stinging. Linda set the final slice onto wax paper and folded it gently. One for Jess, for later. By morning, the kitchen smelled of toast and butter, not because Aaron cooked, but because Linda had decided it was a day for real food, made on her own terms. The radio hummed low from the windowsill, something from the 70s, a ballad that knew when to ache. Aaron shuffled in around 8:10, still in her robe, still too quiet for someone who usually filled the room with lists and schedules before the coffee brewed. Linda didn't greet her. She cracked an egg into a warm skillet. "One? Not two?" "Just one," Aaron said. Linda flipped the egg gently, letting the sizzle answer for her. "I thought maybe we could talk," Aaron said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You've been doing a lot of that," Linda replied. "Just not to me." Aaron hovered, restless. She watched the egg cook, but didn't ask for a bite. Linda plated the egg with a single piece of buttered toast. She sat at the breakfast nook, the small two-seat table by the window where she used to do crossword puzzles, and began to eat in silence. Aaron finally pulled out the chair across from her. "You're really going through with it." Linda took a sip of tea. "The paperwork says so. We have the kids. This isn't a clean process. It wasn't clean when you carved my place down to meal portions." Aaron's lips twitched. "You know I didn't mean anything by that." "You meant everything," Linda said. "You just didn't think it would cost you anything." She stood up, walked to the printer by her desk, and pulled a freshly printed document from the tray. She returned to the table and placed it down between them. It was a sheriff-assisted notice of enforcement, prepared, notarized, and activated if Aaron and Todd refused to vacate by the deadline. "Just in case," Linda said. "I don't want confusion." Aaron stared at the document like it might vanish if she blinked enough. "We're not criminals." "No," Linda said. "You're just tenants who forgot I wasn't a tenant, too." Aaron's eyes welled. She didn't hide it. "You're choosing strangers over your own daughter." Linda paused, the insult sinking in like a coin into deep water. "No," she said. "I'm choosing someone who remembers I'm still a person." She picked up her plate, rinsed it clean, and set it in the drying rack. Behind her, she heard Aaron sob, quiet at first, then louder, unchecked. Linda didn't turn around. She dried her hands on a dish towel, folded it, and set it aside. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt clear. It wasn't the cry of someone losing a home. It was the cry of someone losing a story they thought they'd never have to revise. Linda stepped toward the hallway. 30 days means 30, she said. "Please pack respectfully." Aaron didn't answer, not with words, just with the sound of her own undoing. That afternoon, she sat in her sunlit bedroom with a lined notepad in her lap, the same kind she used to use during her community nursing years to chart observations in silence when patients couldn't speak. Except now, the patient was her own history. She wrote, "Dear Linda, you stayed quiet long enough to keep the house warm, the fridge stocked, the towels folded. You gave them your savings, your weekends, your back. And they still decided your presence was clutter. You aren't bitter. You're full. Full of memory, full of knowing, full of things that can't be measured by someone else's schedule or serving size." Her pen paused at that line. She thought of the calendar on the fridge, her name reduced to a gold marker and dietary notes. Thought of Sharon being offered the good creamer and freshly pressed sheets while she was told which chair had the most supportive lumbar. She had gone from mother to margin. Her phone buzzed beside her. Jess. "Hey, Grandma, I wanted to tell you something before Aaron does." Linda braced. "Go ahead." "I found them a short-term rental," Jess said. "It's outside town, but it's clean, furnished, and the landlord's open to them staying past 30 days if they don't make trouble." "You did that?" Linda asked, her voice gentler than she expected. "I didn't do it for them," Jess said. "I did it for you, so you wouldn't feel guilted into undoing what's finally fair." Linda didn't speak right away. The quiet on the line was warm. Jess broke it. "You always made sure I had a place at the table even when the table was plastic and the chairs were folding. That means something. And you don't owe them for forgetting it." Linda pressed her hand to her chest, not to soothe, just to remember she was still here, beating, rooted. "Thank you," she said. "That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in years." After they hung up, she stepped out into the backyard with her tea. The sun was low, slicing shadows through the maple leaves. She walked the edge of the garden, inspecting the spots where her perennials had either bloomed stubbornly or given up completely. It was all metaphor now. Every patch of dirt said something. She didn't expect the phone to ring again so soon. Unknown caller, local area code. She answered. "Hi, is this Linda Grayson?" "Yes." "This is Margot Torres. I used to live across from you on Willow Court. I heard you might be looking for someone to rent part of your place." Linda blinked. "I, well, yes, actually." Margot continued. "I'm back in town, just me now. I'm looking for something quiet, close to the garden center. I remembered how lovely your back porch was and thought, maybe—" Linda looked out at the porch, now empty but sun-kissed. For years it had been a space she wasn't invited to enjoy, occupied by Aaron's yoga mats or Todd's weekend coolers. Now, someone wanted to come back to it, someone who remembered it with warmth. "I think that could work," Linda said. "Would you be open to showing it this week?" "I'll be here," Linda said, her voice clearer than it had sounded in days. She ended the call and walked slowly inside, passing by the kitchen, the scene of the final egg, the half-listened sob, the power shift dressed as breakfast. And in that room, once more, the air smelled like butter. The next morning, the porch was quiet when Linda opened the curtains. Not silent, the kind of quiet that came after a slammed door, after the engine had already started, the kind that left only wind behind. She stood for a moment watching the driveway, the gravel still dented from where Todd's car had idled too many times. The air was heavy with the scent of morning soil and the faint sour trace of ammonia from last night's rushed cleaning spree. It was moving day. No hugs, no photos, no boxes labeled with hearts or memories. Just black garbage bags, rolled rugs, a mattress half wrapped in plastic, leaning at an angle on the lawn, like a bad joke. Todd had started loading the truck at 7:04 a.m., arms stiff, lips tighter than the ratchet straps he looped across the back. Aaron hadn't looked at Linda once when she passed by the kitchen, not when she unplugged the espresso machine, not when she packed the shared blender Linda had bought during a Black Friday sale. At 8:10, Aaron finally broke the silence. "You'll regret this," she said, arms crossed, keys dangling from one finger. Linda looked up from her tea. "I already regret not doing it sooner." Aaron's nostrils flared. "You've made yourself very clear. Congratulations on winning your house back. I hope you enjoy the echo." Todd came in then, arms full of tech equipment. "You ready?" he asked Aaron, eyes refusing to land on Linda. "I've been ready," she muttered. Then she turned, paused at the threshold, and added, "I won't speak to you again." Linda didn't flinch. Then we finally agree on something. The front door closed, not slammed. Worse, it clicked, quiet, final, like the ceiling of a vault. Linda didn't follow them outside. She waited until the engine coughed to life and the truck rolled down the street. She listened as the tires chewed gravel, shrinking away until they were just a memory gnawing at the curb. Then she stood. She moved through the house, slowly, not out of grief, but caution, as though the air hadn't caught up to the absence yet. The walls still held the residue of voices. The baseboard still remembered where backpacks had been dropped, where laundry baskets sat too long. The guest suite looked like a hotel room abandoned mid-checkout. Sheets stripped, closet door swinging open like a jaw left ajar. A ring of dust outlined where a nightstand had been. A lone sock lay curled near the vent, like it had tried to stay behind and been forgotten. Linda ran her hand along the windowsill. The paint was chipped beneath the curtain rod. She'd once sat there reading, the sun pouring in while she sipped coffee she made on her own terms. It had been hers then, not. Now, somehow, it was hers again. In the bathroom, she opened the cabinet and found 3 nearly empty bottles of her shampoo, used but never replaced. A sliver of her soap sat in the corner, dry and curled, like it had given up trying. She walked back into the hall, then paused at the door to the garage. The bin was already full. Plastic bags, crumpled paper, a pair of cracked headphones. She opened the lid. Right on top, bent and splayed open at the spine, was her old red recipe book, the one with handwritten notes in the margins. Her mother's pecan pie in faded blue ink. Daniel's chili recipe, complete with the scribble correction, add cinnamon. Trust me. The back page was torn. It had been tossed like junk mail. Linda stared down at it, her throat tightening, not with sadness, but something denser, something that tasted like confirmation. She didn't reach for it. The trash lid shut with a soft thunk, but the sound lingered in Linda's ribs like an echo with something to say. She stood there for a moment longer, hands still resting on the edge, eyes fixed on the silent garage, half expecting a voice, Aaron's maybe, to call out behind her. But nothing came. No more negotiations, no more clipped comments, just the hollow hush of a house that had finally exhaled. She turned, walked back inside, and locked the back door. Not because she had to, but because she could. The kitchen was still warm from the afternoon sun, golden light puddling in front of the sink. Linda opened the fridge. It was nearly empty, intentionally so. No meal prep containers labeled no salt. No almond milk someone else bought but never used. Just the things she lacked: a wedge of aged cheddar, 2 ripe tomatoes, a bottle of Chardonnay, chilled just enough, and a loaf of fresh bread she'd picked up that morning without anyone asking her why. She moved without hurry, without oversight. She sliced the bread thick, layered it with cheese, tomatoes, and fresh basil from her tiny garden out back, a drizzle of olive oil, a sprinkle of cracked pepper. She turned on the stovetop and let the sandwich sizzle in the pan, butter crisping the edges to a golden crunch. The aroma filled the kitchen, rich, buttery, alive. It smelled like autonomy. For the first time in 3 years, she set the table for one, cloth napkin, folded just so, her mother's blue-rimmed plate, the nice fork. Then she poured herself a full glass of wine, not a half, not a sip out of politeness, a full pour. The glug of the bottle was music. She sat and she ate. No one asked her to speed up. No one lifted her portion before she was done. No one told her what was better for her heart. It was just her, and it was enough. Every bite felt like a reclamation, every sip a contract with herself. She didn't rush the meal. She didn't scroll her phone. She let silence sit beside her like an old friend, not a punishment. When she finished, she cleared the plate, washed it gently, dried it with the towel she liked, the soft one with the embroidered lemons. Then she lit a small candle in the window. As she passed the hall, she glanced into the former guest suite, now empty, still echoing. A box sat in the corner, her red recipe book, retrieved from the trash before garbage pickup. She hadn't opened it yet. She would in time. The house no longer whispered what it owed her. It simply listened. She was refilling her wine glass when the knock came. 3 gentle taps, then a pause. She opened the door. There stood Jess, wearing a college hoodie and holding a foil-covered plate that smelled of cinnamon and something warm. "Dinner looked lonely," Jess said, smiling, "so I brought dessert." Linda blinked, surprised not at the visit, but at the timing. She stepped aside without a word. Jess walked in, set the plate on the table, and peeled back the foil. Homemade snickerdoodles. Slightly uneven, a little too brown on one edge, but soft in the middle. "I made them for study group," Jess said. "But it got canceled. Thought maybe you'd like one." Linda reached for a cookie, broke it in half, and handed the larger piece to Jess. They stood there in the glow of the kitchen light. No scripts, no roles, just warmth and sugar between them. "You doing okay, Grandma?" Jess asked softly. Linda nodded once, better than I expected. Jess smiled again, and in that smile, Linda saw something that had nothing to do with obligation, just choice. She sat with Jess until the candle melted halfway down its wick, the light bending shadows across the walls like soft brush strokes. The quiet didn't ache anymore. It resonated. It felt like belonging. In the days that followed, a rhythm took root. Not choreographed, not forced, just natural. Jess started coming over every weekend, sometimes with a book, sometimes with laundry, sometimes just with time. She never asked permission. She simply arrived and made herself useful without making herself central. She'd sweep the porch without being told, leave Post-its on the fridge with reminders like, "Buy cream, not that oat stuff," or "plant basil." They drank coffee together in the morning sun, feet tucked into slippers, the newspaper open between them. Jess never cried about the past few months. She didn't need to. She was watching the aftermath bloom in real time. One Sunday, Jess looked up from her tea. "What happens to the house when you're gone?" Linda glanced at her over her glasses. "Why? You planning to speed up the process?" Jess laughed, a full laugh. "No, I just meant it's beautiful, and I think it should keep being lived in like this." Linda nodded slowly, the corner of her mouth lifting. "It will. I made sure of that." Later that night, Linda reopened her journal, the one that hadn't seen ink since the eviction notice was delivered. The leather still smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. She flipped to the last page and began writing in her slow looping script. "This home was built with care. I reclaimed it with clarity. I did not burn bridges. I rerouted the roads. I gave myself back the dignity no one should have had the power to ration." She paused, then added, "Some stories end with silence. Mine ends with a full table." By the end of the week, invitations had been delivered, handwritten, one per household. Not an email blast, not a social media post, just envelopes with pressed hydrangea stickers addressed to the neighbors who had waved politely through the awkwardness, who had seen her pruning roses even when no one came out to help, who had walked their dogs past her driveway without ever asking what the real story was. Dinner at Linda's this Sunday, 6 p.m. Bring nothing but conversation. She spent Saturday prepping, not with panic, with purpose. The table was set with real linens, her wedding silver, and the ceramic dishes she'd wrapped in newspaper when she moved in. Music played low, Ella Fitzgerald, warm and looping. A pot roast, slow-cooked all day, green beans roasted in garlic and lemon, her mother's cornbread recipe, not reduced in salt or butter, and dessert. A citrus tart Jess had insisted on baking herself, crust uneven but sincere. By 6, the doorbell rang, then again, then again. Neighbors trickled in, some with wine, some with awkward smiles. They didn't know what to expect. But when they stepped into Linda's kitchen, when they saw the table, long, bright, unapologetically full, they softened. "I've driven by this house for 5 years and never been inside," one woman said. Linda smiled. "Tonight's a good night to change that." They ate, they laughed, they passed dishes without commentary. No one measured portions. No one told her what she needed less of. At one point, someone toasted her, clumsily with sparkling cider in a mismatched glass. To Linda, who reminds us that boundaries and hospitality aren't enemies. She raised her glass, to clarity, and second servings. The meal went on for hours, the kind that melts from evening to night without anyone checking the clock. Jess sat beside her, quiet, observant, protective in the way only someone who's seen someone else disrespected can be. She leaned in during a lull and whispered, I think Grandpa would have loved this. Linda didn't answer right away. She simply reached for the gravy boat and said, "Then have some more." By 9:30, the house was quiet again. The dishes stacked, but not scrubbed. The leftover tart placed gently into a tin for later. Linda walked to the living room and sat in her favorite chair, the one Aaron had once said clashed with the decor. She looked around at the space, still glowing from stories and candlelight. She pulled out her journal once more. No fanfare, just one last line. They gave me half a plate. I gave them a full consequence. And this time, she didn't just close the journal. She shelved it, not because the story was over, but because it had finally been told.